Instacart helps you get beer and wine delivered in as fast as an hour. So, whether you need to fill the cooler for tailgate season or fill your glass for Pinot by the fire season, you can save time by getting fall sips delivered in just a few clicks. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Must be 21 or over for alcohol delivery where available. Instacart. Add life to cart.
Slow Burn Media, an evergreen podcast, presents Who Killed, a podcast that provides a voice for the voiceless. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Who Killed. I am your host, Bill Huffman, and this is a Slow Burn Media, evergreen podcast and killer podcast production. This week we'll wrap up our conversation with author Jan Brogan, who wrote the book The Combat Zone, Murder, Race, and Boston's Struggle for Justice, which is about a murder that happened the night after Harvard's end-of-season breakup dinner in 1976, when more than 40 players went to Boston's red light district to celebrate. 2 football players were stabbed, 1 fatally. It made national news and led to the eventual demise of the Combat Zone. So let's join my conversation in part 2 of our interview.
Danny Puopolo, the younger brother, who is this book is this he's like the drive, because driver of this book. He's 19 at the time, and what I've learned from, when you murder somebody, you're really destroying an estimate 8 to 10 lives, because when you're a survivor of a murder victim, your family, you never recover. You can have PTSD just by losing someone suddenly, like in a car accident, but when you throw in murder and the violence to your loved one and the machinations of the criminal justice system, not once but twice, where you have to provide testimony, you have to go through the details of this again. And trials are very much about the defendant's rights, right? They're not about the victim. And you go through this. So Danny will really never get over this to this day. He will never get over this. At that point, he's 19. Because they're from the North End, although they've moved to Jamaica Plain, they have no connections to the mob at all. The family is very religious. They do have a restaurant business where they provision restaurants. So they have a lot. They know, the father went to elementary school with the Angiulo brothers. They offered him a corner when he got out of the military, and he said no. With all due respect, no, that's not the direction we're going in with my family. But they have connections, and there's all sorts of rumors that this will never go to trial, that these guys are going to be whacked in prison. And I mean, the rumors are so strong. They actually there's actually a story where they go to the sheriff, and he says, no, they're safe. I have got them safe. They're not going to get killed. Right? That's how strong the rumors are. That I talked to reporters who said they didn't think it would ever come to trial, and not to mention the North End owns the Combat Zone, and they're losing something like $50,000 a week in lost revenues because the city has shut it down. So there's all sorts of motivation to whack them.
And it's not like it's never happened before,
Right.
I mean, It happened a lot in the South, and, let's just leave the door unlocked and see what happens.
Right. And Andy Puopolo is, he's the bright light of the North End. Not many kids come out of the North End and go to Harvard. And, he was very much, he would have the whole North End at the home Harvard football games. He's a football star, and they're like, no one's going to let. So Danny's hearing this every time he goes to the North End. Where his family still has a business there. Like someone will say to him, "Don't worry, Danny, this is going to get taken care of. Don't worry."
It's weird to hear. It's like you want to hear it, be like, "Oh, that's great," but then it's just also kind of like it's just an odd thing to be told.
But the family is very religious. They put their faith in the criminal justice system. To this day, they love Tom Mundy, who fought very hard for them. But I think the problem was like when you lose someone to murder, what you want is the maximum justice, right? If you're told the maximum justice is Leon Easterling spending life in prison for murder, then that's what you want. In cities, in states that have capital punishment, you want them to get you want them to fry. Danny never wanted them to fry. He wanted him because that's what maximum justice was. But they were told maximum justice is all three of them going to prison for life with no parole.
And that's first degree.
Right, first degree. And remember, becomes very important because people in the family is grieving, and friends will say, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about what happened to Andy." But what was he doing in the combat zone that night? This is what the family hears all the time, as if he deserved it. What was he doing? And even when I was doing my research, the people would say to me, "Oh, that's that kid who tried to get his wallet back from the prostitute." And I would say, "No, it's not."
Victim blaming. I mean, we see it
and
all the
even
time.
In the book, people will say to me, "Well, it's really the Harvard football team's. It's really their fault. They were so privileged to go to the combat zone." And I say to them, "Look, they were 18 because of the drinking lunch. They were 18, 19-year-old boys playing, for the Harvard football team. They went for a drink together with every other, what everybody was doing at that time. It might have been stupid, but they didn't deserve it."
I mean, what do 18, 19-year-old college kids do? I mean, it's part of the repertoire of a college student is to go out and party. I mean,
Right.
It just is, unless
Right.
you're...
I mean, they weren't throwing rocks at school buses full of black kids.
No.
They had nothing to do with the city's, racial problems. But
they were happy playing football for
Right.
Harvard.
It's important for them to have justice, but it's important even more because of this stain on their fallen hero. They get the convictions they want, and it's that feeling is very short-lived because the defense attorneys led by Henry Owen appeal, and they appeal in a bunch of different ways. They appeal, they say there wasn't enough evidence to support joint venture, and the jury, this is overly harsh, and the jury, and because of jury selection. So the state high court will actually come back and they will say, no, there is plenty of evidence to support joint venture conviction of all three of them. But because of the jury selection, we have to retry it. So to the family, that feels like a technicality. So between the first trial and the second trial, the city begins to change, right? The city starts to get sick of all this violence around the schools. Trixie Palladino, Louise Day Hicks, and I think John Connor, who all the leaders of the anti-busing movement, they will be voted out in the next election, right? What's happening is, as opposed to actually integrating the schools, what happens is anybody who is white leaves the city or puts their kid in parochial school. So very quickly, it's now a majority school system. So there's nobody to protest. So the violence actually starts to leave the schools and it works its way into the neighborhoods. But
great,
yeah, it works its way into the neighborhood. So, but the school issues and there's a lot of stuff that comes out in the 2.5 years. One of them is shortly after the Puopolo convictions. There's a black victim named Brian Nelson, 18-year-old, and he's with two of his friends in a car. His brother is a fallen Vietnam hero who actually has a square named after him in, I think, Medford, and they get into it with a van of 9 white kids. They wound up spinning out. There's some snow, and they get into a fight. Nelson gets murdered with a tire iron and they think it's a broken glass. He's murdered. Not only will none of those white boys who were there get joint venture won't be applied to them. The one kid who is charged, is a former Marine. He's I think 19. He will only be charged with manslaughter, and an all-white jury will find him innocent. So the contrast between those two outcomes is very stark. This is also when Carson Beach is that's the beach in Southie. There's a lot of black-white violence there, and they're arresting white kids, but nobody, when it comes to they're getting punishment. There's not much. There's a black school, a school of black kids comes up from I think it's Ohio or Pennsylvania to see the Bunker Hill Monument on a field trip, and they will be attacked by three white guys with hockey sticks, and they will arrest three white kids, and they will be found innocent by an all-white jury. Although in that particular case, there appears to be, it looks like the police work was shoddy. They might have not gotten the three white ones because they can't be identified at the trial. So it looks like that was, but the optics of it are just horrendous. And then to tap it off, I think it's like 2 weeks before the trial, the second Puopolo trial will begin in the fall of 1979. Darrell Williams, a 15-year-old black football player playing football in the Charlestown field, will be shot by three white kids up on a roof, and he will get a 22 bullet through his, and he will be in a coma, and it's looked like he's not going to make it. This is all in the news when they tried the second trial. So the second trial is the first time what's called the Soares decision is put into practice. So this new Soares decision, which will later be used as precedent for the federal U.S. Supreme Court Batson decision, says that when you're picking a jury trial, if you start, like if you're on your third Italian that you struck without giving a reason, the other sides keep track, and you can appeal the case. So it's a free-for-all jury selection the second time, but it's like, hey, you've got two Italians, you just cut, So the final jury ends up with, I think, 3 blacks in it, and one might be an alternate. I think it's 3 blacks, and they will come to a very, very different conclusion. And that's where I'm going to leave you with, so people actually read the book. But a lot of the stories to talk about a little bit more about Danny. Danny is not the athletic star that his brother is, but he is a big guy who is an excellent boxer. Plus he grew up in the North End, so he has the motivation, and he has the means to exact revenge. And the book is largely about this battle with revenge and what it all means.
Yeah, that's
and how there is a very fine line between justice and revenge.
That there is. That is an intriguing way to end the interview, because it is definitely a cliffhanger, and I definitely would recommend anybody who's interested in this era to go back. I mean, we have YouTube now, and you can see all these clips from the AP about busing and just the horrible reactions that the city had to, these decisions. But it's just a shocking case, and the idea that there was a red light district in Boston, which, like you mentioned before, it's always considered a very puritanical city, and it's sort of one of those things that's kind of, for my generation, flown under the radar. And it's sort of, would you compare it to the way that Times Square was, or was it even worse than that?
I think it was worse than Times Square, because I don't know if the mob owned Times Square, although the mob owned much of pornography over the across the nation. It's probably a smaller footprint, but more violence.
Okay.
And it was, I think ABC came to do a story on it. It was just a Wild West, and really, it's the DVR that puts, it begins shrinking after this case, but it's really the DVR that puts it out of business. Now there's only 2 very tame looking strip clubs, and it's all luxury apartments. As a matter of fact, I did a book club. I've done 2 book clubs. I've given them tours of the combat zone where everything happened. And you can't believe it now. It's like one of the book clubs was at the Ritz, So which has a beautiful, like, from this Ritz apartment, there's a view of the alley where Andy was murdered.
Oh no.
The city has changed. a lot, and you know, it still gets dinged all the time for being racist.
I
And
was going to ask.
but now we have a black police commissioner, like the head of, we have an Asian mayor. The city council is predominantly of color, and black. So things are changing. I think we have a black district attorney. So the power is changing. The city is also very affluent. One of the problems is that it's hard to live down. It's hard to live down that kind of reputation. What happens is middle class professional blacks, when they get job opportunities, they don't want to relocate here, right? So you still have the poorest population is black. There's a lot of inequity in terms of salaries, and in terms of the colleges. You're like, one of the guys who helped me a lot on this book, Charles Walker, who once headed the mass discrimination. He's a young black one. He said when he said he wanted to go to college at BC, law school at BC, his mother cried. She did, and he told me about experiences when he first got here. They got lost, and they were stopped by a cop, and they were really nervous. From the cop, and the cop said, "Look, you got to get the hell out of this neighborhood. You're going to get killed. Go this." The cop was actually trying to help him.
It's so true. And I mean, they did the same stuff in Cleveland. I mean, it's so true. Like, they would stop you if they saw you in a neighborhood that you weren't supposed to be in. They'd just be like, "Don't stop at any red lights and just get the hell out of here."
Right.
It's like, what?
No, this is, like, remember Boston got known for the photo. It's called The Soiling of Old Glory. There's white kids. They were protesting at Boston City Hall. They had a flag, they were protesting busing. And a black businessman just like walks through the center to get to his meeting, and they attack him with the flag. And that won a Pulitzer Prize. It's in 1976. That happened just maybe 6 months before this murder, 4 months before this murder. So Boston's at its zenith of racism at the time.
Jeez. Yeah, it was a really rough time across the country, but Boston for sure was bearing the brunt of it. And I mean, again, a lot of it has to do with, where these people originated from. And racism is a disease that can just spread fast and furiously. And it's a shame that it exists, but it does. And it's good to know that it has gotten more diversified as far as the leaders and stuff. But as we both know, living in a city like Boston is not affordable for a lot of people. I mean, and most people. Yeah, and so it's a really slippery slope. And I just feel like, I think about what you mentioned earlier when you said that Southie wouldn't allow black people to live there.
Yeah, well, so there was in the public housing.
Okay.
It was a huge public housing, and it had been all white historically, and so blacks had to sue to integrate it, and so that's a fight, right? That's a fight going on. I think the housing battles get settled after busing. So I think this is still very much. And remember, I failed to mention that. Unemployment. This is also during a recession.
Oh, so yes.
Unemployment in those poor white neighborhoods is 15%. It's 20% in the black neighborhoods. And you have a lot of young men coming of age. It's the baby boom.
That's powder keg.
Yeah, it's a powder keg. So that's a lot of what went on.
And you can find out more by reading your book.
Yeah, and I find that people who listen to podcasts love audiobooks.
Yes.
So it's a reader. It's a great audiobook. And you can get it, at your local independent bookstore. You can get it, on Amazon. You can get it at the UMass website.
Audible, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Audible. Yeah, it's Audible, and it's it's a good listen. So
I'm looking very much forward to diving deeper into this story, and it's so intriguing. And I think there's a lot of people, a lot of listeners out there that don't realize how bad it really was for a lot of this country. And I know that we're going backwards in a lot of ways right now, and so they're getting a little bit of a taste of what it was like, but this is nothing compared to what it was back then.
One of the best things about this book, and I mentioned it took 10 years to get this book started, get this book in publishing. But one of the best things was the research, because, there's nothing like going back to the 70s to make you feel a lot better about today. you know, there's the 70s, you forget, you tend to think you're living in the worst of times. But the 70s were really the worst of times.
I know for a fact, because I always go through all the, newspapers.com and go through and look at old newspapers for stories and stuff like that. And just the way that they, it would be like two gay men, like in the headlines, like, what the hell does that have to do with the story?
Right.
It was the way that things were portrayed and the way that things have evolved throughout our lifetimes.
Yeah.
It's wild. And like you said, you may think, and when you look out the window or turn on the cable news, the world's falling apart, but we're still better off than we were.
Yeah. But the bar's been raised. It was a very low bar then, it's been raised. And and that's important that it is raised, and that we all still work to improve. There's a lot of improvements to be made.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't look back and say that, things have improved a little, if you can't see change, then what's the point of working for change? Because then change doesn't exist. You have to believe that things can change, and that you can work towards change. And the 70s shows you that, like, things can get better, maybe at a glacial pace, but they can, they could still get better. I mean, maybe there's a lot of institutional racism and subtle racism, but then it was just like in your face with a knife racism, so, or with a rocks at your children.
The idea that you would have, again, racism and hate is taught. It's not something you're born with. Kids aren't born to see color. It's something that they learn from their parents. And if your parent is out there throwing rocks,
it's just
perpetuating the problem.
Right. And the guy, God knows the language that's going on at home, but
exactly. If that's what they're doing in public, just imagine what they're doing behind the closed doors.
And to be fair to the Irish, if you look, when I've researched this in depth. It started with the English coming, the Brahmins in Boston.
Oh,
and when the Irish came here, that they just treated the Irish like absolute crap. And so when the Irish got in power, they felt like, okay, now it's our turn. Now we'll treat the newcomers like crap. And that's one reason, like, they treated the Italians like crap. That's one reason that Andy Puopolo was so determined to make friends with blacks, because he felt like the underdog, being an Italian. So, it's just
Isn't it weird how that works? Each generation kind of has another look at what's going on. It's just like, okay, we're going to hate the Irish. We're going to hate the English. And of course the English, let's just go and take over all this land all around the world. And just.
Right. The difference is that, blacks have not been able to make that much progress because of the rigidness of the racism. So they've definitely had worse. But the world does change.
It does change. And
hopefully it will continue to improve. But
where can people find you?
So you can, as mentioned, you can find the book at any independent bookstores or Amazon or UMass. You can get there through my website, www.janbrogan.com. You can follow me on Instagram, where I think it's janbrogan_, and Facebook, where I think it's janbrogan07, and Twitter, where it's just Jan Brogan, or X, where it's just Jan Brogan. I want to make a plug. So some of the editing of this, a lot of this editing, I'm very lucky to have a son who's also a writer. And I have a writing partner, Barbara Shapiro, author of The Art Fortress. So she and my son, who's Frank Santo, were the editors on this book, my first editors on this book. And he now has a novel out, just out from a Chicago press called Tortoise Books. And his novel, which has gotten fabulous reviews, is called The Birth Parents, one word. And it's about kind of a white savior who goes into the South Bronx as a caseworker and thinks he's going to save the world and learns very differently. It's good. It's got great characters. It's yeah. It's a really great book. So, you know, yep, yep. It's on Amazon. It's on. It's a Tortoise Books. I think Chicago, and it's in it can be ordered through your independent bookstore. So
And that's called The Birth Parents.
The Birth Parents, one word. Yeah.
Very cool.
So
Very cool. Well, Jan, I have enjoyed our conversation. I know that we've gone a little bit longer than we had planned, but this is a very deep story with a lot of rich history that may better be kept in the past. But, it is one of those things that you can't avoid talking about. So I hope for Danny and I hope for the Puopolo family that justice is eventually made or whatever.
I think
But
what they want most of all is to separate the son's name, Andy Puopolo, from the city's racism, because he had nothing to do with the way that the situation of the trial, and he was the victim in all this, and he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything wrong, and it was a big loss to society.
can I ask one last question?
Yeah.
Because I kind of missed the opportunity before. When you mentioned that you were studying journalism and you were going to
Yeah.
school in the area, were you aware of how bad it was?
No, which shows you just how self-centered you are when you're a young adult. Because I was actually a journalism major at Boston University, and I mean, I knew about it, but I didn't understand the extent of it, And I had heard about this murder as well, and when someone told me this started as a screenplay, when someone told me that Danny Puopolo was looking for a screenwriter, I said, why the hell was Danny Puopolo looking for a screenwriter? And he said, well, remember that murder of the Harvard football player in the combat zone? I was like, that's his brother. I was like, oh. And then I started, investigating, and then I started working with Danny, and we had a director and everything. But, I knew that, I did it on spec because I knew we didn't have any money, which means you only get paid if they make it into a movie, which means you never get paid. So my deal was, I'll write the screenplay, but I have to have the rights to do a book, and the book has to be my way because I'm a journalist. And all this is in the book. So Danny and I had an agreement. So
Got to pick up the book. Got to pick it up.
Pick up the book.
Even listen to it.
Yep.
All right, Jan, thanks so much for your time. And
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I hope to have you on for your next book. Are you working on anything right now?
I am. I'm working, although it's not true crime. So
it's okay.
All right. So I'm working on a book. I actually write novels too. I wrote 4 murder mysteries.
Oh, awesome.
But what my real true love is history. So I wrote a historical novel about the women who went whaling with their husbands in the 19th century. They were captains' wives, and I couldn't get my agent to sell it. So I wanted to reconfigure it, and I wound up interviewing. I wanted to introduce a modern day whaling woman, and my idea was that she would be a descendant of one of these whaling wives who so fascinate me. And by a weird stroke of coincidence, I wound up meeting a whale scientist who is related to one of the, and I knew the woman she was talking about because I'd done so much research. Marianne Sherman, I know her, So, and her name is Nan Hauser, and she's a pretty famous whale scientist. She was saved by a humpback whale from a tiger shark in 2017. And she's also been in a lot of nature programs. So it went viral to 600 million views. And when I went to interview her just to get background for my novel, she said to me, you wouldn't want to write my book, would you? And I said, I would love to write you. Because halfway through, she's spending her life saving the whales. Halfway through this, she realizes she's a descendant of a whaling captain. And on her mother's side, the family was very big into financing whaling. And so there's just a lot of fascinating things about her life and her work, and also, making her way as a whale scientist through this, the 80s and 90s, and reaching her her level of attainment and all she's been able to do she's established a whale sanctuary in Rarotonga, and she just has done marvelous work. So that's
another example of how times change.
Yeah, right.
So, well, that's very cool. That's very interesting.
So
I love all those 19th century books about whaling and Arctic expeditions and that kind of stuff. It's super interesting stuff. And again, Jan, thanks so much for your time. And if you have any final words.
I'm also working on a book. I'm trying to put together a book about the very first fentanyl bust, which was in Cleveland and Boston. I actually know one of the participants in it. He went to college with him, so I've been fascinated. He was a sociopath. I've been fascinated by him.
That sounds really interesting, considering I'm from Cleveland. And yes, that wow.
I'm trying to find the DEA guys who investigated, and I've been trying to locate them. So if anybody was involved in that first fentanyl bust and is listening to this podcast, please contact me through my website.
I'll reach out to some FBI contacts that I have and see if they know any DEA agents.
I'll send you the details on the case.
Okay, sounds good.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It was really
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure.
Okay,
so thank you, and have a wonderful day. All right, thanks to Jan Brogan, award-winning author. Check out her website, janbrogan.com. And again, she is quite the prolific author. She has been an award-winning author of 4 mysteries, so check her out. Definitely check her out. I can't thank her enough for coming on the show. And thank you to Maureen Boyle for the referral. Keep those coming. And again, thank you guys for listening to the show. Without you, I wouldn't be here. And again, I drop new episodes every Friday, so you can expect a new one next Friday as well. So thanks again to Jan Brogan. Thank you, the listeners. You can follow me on Twitter at BillHuffman3. And until next time, as always, stay healthy and be safe.
Women's Running Stories, where we explore the intersection between running and life. Because every woman who is committed to a running journey has a story to tell, and this is where you'll find those stories. I am host and producer Cherie Louise Turner. I'm a 53-year-old runner, and together with original music by musician and runner Cormac O'Regan, we bring these inspirational stories to life. Please join us to fuel your adventures.
Hi, podcast listeners. I'm Carol Costello, a former CNN anchor and national correspondent. This January, I'm launching a podcast about one of the first cases I ever covered as a journalist. It's one that stuck with me all of these years, the one that buried itself under my skin and stayed put. It's a true crime series about an amazing woman named Phyllis Cottle, who defied torture and death and brought a fierce rage to the quest to find her attacker. Carol Costello Presents Blind Rage is a production of Evergreen Podcasts and signature title of the Killer Podcast Network. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcast.com.